that doesn't really help with engineering, because you're trying to engineer your way into a better balance, and then you put on a specific set of tyres from whichever manufacturer you happen to get to, and if you get one of their confidential set of tyres, it fixes everything for good. But you can't use them all race long necessarily, so then all of a sudden you still come back to the original problem. Cars, as you can hear, heading out on track, and as ever, a chance to get everything nicely warmed up by going around the Grand Prix loop before you head out into the wilds of the Nordschleife. So we won't be starting to see any representative times being set, really. Leaving the pits, somebody's already smoking around the Grand Prix circuit with a left front tyre going down. That's one of the Porsche Cup cars, so we'll just document that quickly while I try and acquaint myself. Oh, excellent, that's the Rent to Drive Familiar Racing, with whom I am unfamiliar.
Familiar. I think it should be
familiar as in family, right?
Yes, I agree.
There was also a little bit of debris falling off either that car or the KTM behind as those two cars left the pit lane. Now, it might already be a bit of, it might be the inner wheel arch, I suppose.
I was thinking maybe wheel arch liner.
That car had a gearbox problem yesterday. I'm not suggesting that is gearbox related, but certainly it stopped out on the circuit and had gearbox worked on it overnight.
It does look as though the tyre is jammed up in the wheel arch, and it may well have pulled the wheel arch liner out. I think that was possibly out of that car. However, if it's had gearbox issues and they put the rear suspension back together, somebody's not put the bolts in the right hole, because it has collapsed on the left-right-hand corner. So left-right-hand, left-rear corner.
Some debate as I was having a quick dash around the paddock and pit lane before this session started as to whether this session will be quicker or not than last night. I think the potential is for the track to be quicker, obviously in full daylight, and for as long as possible we keep our fingers crossed without any caution areas on the track, because that's what did for most of last night's session. You were talking earlier on, Martin, about what happened last night. Well, it was a 3-hour session, or a 2-hour and 55-minute session in the end. But of those 2 hours and 55 minutes, I would be surprised if more than 45 minutes of it was on a completely clear track. So the amount of time you got to set a lap time was severely limited. Whether that will be the same in today's session, obviously we'll have to wait and see. But the thought was that even if the track is quicker, those times up at the top, the guys who have set them, who are none of them in the top 15, the top 30 is down to top 15, because 15 have already qualified by virtue of their performances in VLN and the qualifying race. But the thought was from those guys that they won't be trying to improve, because the times they have set already are good enough to ensure that, however, even if they get bumped down, they'll only get bumped down a place or two, and that won't push them out of the top 15. So the top 5 or 6 times, the team's saying they're probably not going to go for any improvements.
Yeah, so it's I mean, essentially, if you're in overnight, it's up to somebody else to bump you out, and if you're not right down on the bubble, then
exactly so. It's aggregated times that set the inclusion or not into the top 30. What then happens, though, is once you're in the top 30, it matters not whether you were first or 30th. You are merely in the top 30. And then where you start in the top 30 shootout is actually drawn by ballot. And so it's not that you're at the front or the back, and then it's the time that you set in the better of your 2 flying laps that you get during the top 30 that decides the grid positions. So for the top 30, the grid position won't be known at the end of this session, but as you rightly said at the build-up, Martin, from 31st downwards, then those positions will be setting their grids in their respective starting groups, except for those that got penalties. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those cars which will be starting either at the back of their respective group or from the pit lane for not obeying the speed limits last night.
Right. I do love a codicil, and that's a starting from the pit lane. That's a codicil and a half when you have to wait for 3 groups of 150 cars in total to go, or 148, however many we start.
that's not like the regulation in the World Endurance Championship.
You don't lose a lap.
You don't lose a lap, but you have to tag on the back of 3 groups. Or
I don't think
the third group.
Yes.
I'm not sure it's at the back of the third group. I think that you tag on at the back of your group.
Your group, okay.
Because there's sufficient gap between the groups. There's 2.5 minutes between the groups. So,
and you'll be in a quicker car than the next group starting behind you, so you won't get immediately engulfed by them.
exactly. So, but it is to show the teams and drivers the seriousness of having to obey these speed limits, because the code 60s, the double yellow flags, are controlled with speed limits, 120 kilometres an hour for a double waved yellow, and 60 kilometres an hour where they show the purple flag. And if you disobey those speed limits, then you get a first warning. First warning is a back of the grid, and then you get a second warning, and if you get a second warning, then you go to the pit lane. But we heard as well from a driver last night, Johnny, who was saying actually in the dark we were still trying to locate where the headlights should be pointing, and I couldn't see where the yellow flag was.
Yes, that was David Thelanius, I think, from one of the Aston Martins, saying that coming down out of Arenberg underneath the bridge there was a yellow flag area. It was green at the foxhole pretty much, and the marshal's post is way up on the top right hand bank, I think.
And his headlights were pointing at the track.
Understandably.
Well, why wouldn't you have them pointing at the trees? They're so pretty. So many of them to see.
Especially at night. But again, that's, I suppose, after several years of coming here, people are used to where the marshal posts are. But you not only have to, when you're new to this track, learn where the track goes, but also where the various reference points are too.
And increasingly, of course, when you have nighttime racing, lights as well as flags, lights that match the flags, hopefully, you know, really help drivers. But then if you come around the corner and there's yellow lights in front of you, either it's a car facing the wrong way, or either way, it's a drama, and you need to be getting off the gas as quickly as you possibly can. First correction of the afternoon from Right Turn Lover would be Volker Streisek. He says he's down to drive a KTM, unaffiliated to major manufacturers, and Opel, previously GM but now PSA Manta. So I think we have to call a Manta is definitely an Opel, so definitely a GM product. I mean, you can't retrospectively say it's now a Peugeot Manta. Don't think so. Oh, hang on a minute.
Yeah, absolutely right. For Volker Streisek driving the KTM with the Stuck brothers, so he's got a good drive lined up for him there. And I have a feeling that Volker has something to do with ESERT Motorsport, who run the KTMs, but I'm not quite sure what. This is our first flying lap coming up to be completed. I think it's going to be Giorgio Piana who's the first one to complete a proper flying lap, and we'll then be able to get some kind of an idea of what a reasonable time is in the green Black Falcon Mercedes number 6, and 8 minutes 24. That's not too bad of a time.
I'm glad that Black Falcon don't live up to their name entirely in their liveries, because that would make life really tricky for everybody.
Shall I mark your card whilst you're marking your Black Falcon card for you?
I'll do that because it'll help instill them in my head.
So the number 4 Black Falcon car is an SAP sponsored car. You remember it as it was last year, but it's not red and white. It's nor is it pale blue and white. It's more a kind of pale yellow with blue on it, blue SAP colours and pale yellow. And then the number 5 Black Falcon car is the Bilstein sponsored car,
and that will be blue and yellow,
which is blue and yellow, but a much brighter yellow.
And more blue and yellow. Okay, so I should write that in bold, blue and yellow, whereas the other one is yellow and blue. Batman is ready for the Batmobile, according to somebody. I'm not quite sure what race seat that is. We've found on our cameras. First time in then from the number 6 car, and just sort of establishing where did he end up with that.
One of the Frickadelli Porsches is already in, and the other one isn't. I think the 31 from memory. Yes, it is. So car 31, the Norbert Siedler, Marco Siegfried, Philippe Fernandez Laza and Mathieu Jaminet Frickadelli Porsche is in. 30 car still requires a place.
So both Manthey Racing Porsches, 911 and 912, are in.
Yeah.
HGP Mercedes have 4 and 48 and 47.
4's not HDP, 4 is Black Falcon.
my little qualified thing, it says...
because they were renumbered. Yes, that's right.
Mercedes AMG HTP.
Yeah,
okay, so
they ran as different numbers. There's a BMW from the M235i Racing Cup car. That's a Classic Cup 5 machine then. 248 is the car. I'm now trying to work out where it's gone off, but it's got damage on the front left corner and a trail of coolant pouring from that car towards the curbing.
It's leaking downhill.
Yes.
Mind you, he has left a trail behind him downhill as well, so yeah, that doesn't really help us much. Team Mathol Racing, Eduardo and Francesco Bugan, Lucas Sadun and Francesco Tornelson Merlini. And it's only the final last name that gives you a clue that he's Italian. So that's a 235i Cup car.
It's between Hoa Act and Wippermann that's happened, with the recovery already taking place, but 248 is stopped and a code 60 now protecting that area. So you're basically climbing up out of the carousel, get to the highest point at Hoa Act, and then on your way to Brunchen, but it's between there and Wippermann that BMW's had sizable off, because it's had contact and then ended up in the middle of the track, and everyone's managing to sneak by on the right-hand side, hopefully avoiding the coolant.
Number 10 Conrad Motorsport Lamborghini Huracan, driven by Michele Di Martino, Christopher Broik, Matthias Henkeler and some bloke called Franz Conrad, who obviously is a friend of the family. The first time we picked it up on camera, it said somebody called Martin was in it, and now it seems to be Christopher Broik. So that car again, personal best in sector 1, 2 and 3. If you like, he's pressing on pretty firmly. The car is definitely bouncing from bump to bump.
Yes, and car 10 looking to grab a qualifying spot, and at the moment it's 27th. I have it down as. No, that's changed because Christopher Brook has gone a little quicker that time, up to 23rd position now. So that would be good enough for the Lamborghini Huracan if it were to stay there. Meanwhile, the number 8 Audi is in the pit lane, and they're doing a driver change there at WRT. And Jens Klingmann in the Falcon Motorsport BMW is now heading through some really fast stuff out in the country. This is the run down to Breitscheid with the campsites in the distance, and the sequence of left-right corners heading down into the valley with the buildings in the distance as well. At the moment, in a moment, crossing the bridge, crossing the road bridge there, and then up through Exmuller as you begin the climb towards the carousel and Hoa Act.
And playing the weaving through traffic game that you spend your entire life playing here when you're in one of the fastest classes of cars, and that BMW M6 in SP9, from where we expect to see pretty much all our top 30 cars appearing. Rescue vehicle now with that BMW at Hoa Act, so still protected by our first code 60. And Paul pointing to our timing screen where the microphone's coming up. Paul, the number 12 Manthey Racing Porsche is setting a quick time.
Yeah, that's the first improvement on a time today, as it were. Everybody else still with their times from yesterday evening. What the screens we've got in front of us don't show us is kind of 2 columns for best time, whether it's in qualifying 1 or qualifying 2. So we kind of have to rely on working it out and things. So, but that's the first improvement from last night's time to today's time for the number 12 Dennis Olsen Manthey Racing Porsche. That's their kind of customer Manthey car. The 2 works Manthey cars, 911 and 912. Apropos of which, You were asking for a summary of what happened yesterday, Martin. 911 yesterday spent about 45 minutes under its awning, not in the garage, but away in the paddock under its awning, having a gearbox malfunction investigated.
Right.
It wasn't a complete new gearbox, but there was something not right, which they had to remove the floor, get a hold of the gearbox, give it a shake, rattle it around, put it back in again, put the floor back in, and then they sent Romain Dumas back out and the end of the session just to make sure that everything was all right.
Right. You would think that the gearbox bit's got enough of a shaking on the track, but clearly not quite enough of a, not specific enough of a shaking. I'm definitely liking the technical knowledge being put in there by all of our mechanical engineering expertise.
The work on the track continuing, so that time from Dennis Olsen being achieved just before he hit that, or before the yellow flag zone came out, so that's not an issue. However, for the moment, whilst that yellow flag is having its effect, the lap times will be coming through just a little bit slower, I suspect. Raffaele Marciello in the number 11 doing an 8:32. I think that was fairly recent. So he showing it's about a 10-second delay, I would say, due to that yellow zone.
Yeah. And it's a fairly long yellow zone as well, so there's no need to be improving. Really doesn't help you even if you pick up the speed right out of that code 60. And that is in Sector 3, isn't it? Yeah, Sector 3, just on the edge of Sector 4.
That's right.
Yep. So Sector 1 and 2, you can go very quickly in as the personal best from Anti-Racing's Dennis Olsen. The Norwegian has gone quickest in Sector 1, and quickest in Sector 2 so far is that Fricadelli Racing number 30 Porsche. Matt Campbell, the Aussie Porsche Junior driver in that car. That's a good couple of seconds up the road from faster times, possibly not, a little further behind. Christian Vautier for Landgraf Motorsport in their Mercedes. He's only about a second behind, so he's got a good Sector 2 going. And that car, number 16 Landgraf car, is 21st, not previously qualified.
This is pretty frustrating though, isn't it? Because you think there's an hour and 50 minutes to go out here. It's not going to take an awful lot to take a good half an hour or more from the teams, and really pays to get a good lap time in the first session, therefore. And that was a bit of a staccato affair with plenty of code 60 here, there and everywhere. So well, those guys will be, I mean, we've got a good chunk of the time still to go, 90 minutes of the session, so nobody will be panicking just yet. But
well, one thing you can guarantee at the Nordschleife, you'd say, yeah, rain, you can't guarantee it. What you can guarantee is traffic and accidents interrupting progress pretty much in any session you go out. So you have to, it's not like running around a Grand Prix circuit anywhere else. You have to sort of just go with the flow a little bit and accept that sometimes the best laid plans of mice and men are not going to come to fruition. You have to be a bit adaptive. And essentially the only way to get time is to be out on track all the time. Now obviously that's not physically possible, but pretty much that's got to be your plan going in.
True. And then hope that when a code 60 is implemented, it's behind you and you've already done that bit of track. But yes, I suppose the more time you're out and circulating, the better your opportunity.
The more likely you are to be on a green track. Or ahead of the incident when it's happened. More pit calls equals more time wasted trying to get up to speed and more likelihood of running into issues. Of course, if it's a long one with barrier repairs, then suddenly you might have the opportunity to go into the pits and do some work. For Paul, because he knows things that I don't know, right turn lever asking a question that hasn't occurred to me yet, and he wants to know. Paul's writing down right turn lever, so I might just.
I'm listening for the question.
Does a car's race time start when it crosses the start line, or when the leader of the start group it is supposed to be in crosses the start line, back referring to not starting in your starting group, but starting from the pit lane at some other time?
In effect, there are three separate races with three separate start times being the three different start groups. So if you're at the back of the grid for start Group 1, your race time starts at 3:30 because that's the time at which the which it is supposed to start at 3:30 when the leading car crosses the start-finish line for the start. Then your race time starts. So. And what that then happens is that 2.5 minutes later, Start Group 2 goes across the line, and everybody in Start Group 2's race time starts at that point. It is not an individual race-by-race 24-hour race, but it is 3 different start groups, and they are each timed separately. Point for those who are at the Nuerburgring who can see the cars is that there are coloured dots on the front windscreens of the cars this year, which are supposed to identify which start group they will be in.
Right.
And those are red for start group 1, yellow for start group 2, and green for start group 3. Apart from anything else, that's just to help the marshals put them in the right place on the grid.
It's not the work of a moment.
No. What is another difference, just on something for you to look forward to tomorrow, Martin, is we have that crazy grid walk where everybody's out on the grid.
Yes.
For the first time, although it happened at the qualifying race, the top 30 will be lined up in echelon formation at the front to give a bit more room to them with their tails into the grandstand side.
Right.
And so you'll be able to move around them much more easily. And then behind the top 30, people will be in 2x2 formation.
Oh, right, okay.
But that's only for the grid walk. As they bring them out to start the pace lap, the formation lap, they'll be in 2x2 formation. But it will mean that there's a little bit more room at the front of the grid for the grid walk, because the top 30, instead of being squashed into 15 rows, will be 1 by 1, as it were, in Le Mans style.
Le Mans style, exactly. Well, that's excellent for hangers-on and ne'er-do-wells like us, because we can get in there and get most of it. The Foxtail Manta has headed out to the pits, but obviously, being the Manta, it didn't just start up and drive out with Volkswagen on board. It needed a push, and then it stalled and refused to go any further. Now, being early in proceedings, they didn't threaten it with the lump hammer, as was used quite significantly last year. Clearly, it is in the back of the garage. Also, the Foxtail Manta has been accompanied by, it seemed, over their racking in the garage, a fox skin.
Yeah, I saw that,
which I think is new. That's a significant performance upgrade for this year.
It certainly makes it more comfy if you're trying to push it as well. It could be warmer, I suppose. Is it strapped to the back?
No, it's on their racking in the garage. Where you've got
right.
Yeah, so sort of hanging over, not actually a stuffed fox, but just a fox skin. So probably nicked from some bar in some rural hotel. Not that RadioLeMans.com would like to disassociate itself from any idea of stealing foxes from the walls of country bars in Germany, of course. Just like to make that very clear indeed.
Sheldon van der Linde is now safely through the code 60 and now into sector 4 on board the car from the team that won this event last year. They being Lance Motorsport, with a revised paint scheme for 2018, darker green on that number 1 car. It was number 29 last year, not the same chassis in fact, but you always get the number 1 on your doors if you are defending champions.
No, the winning car is down in the Audi sort of media area by their enormous hospitality suite, still with all the filth, the tyre marks and everything else on it from last year's N24 victory. So that's, and actually I walked down there with Matty O'Neill yesterday. It's been nice to have so much money that when a car wins a race, you just spray it in lacquer and keep it like that forever and don't have to reuse it. Well, that's possibly the difference between a privately funded team in the British touring cars and Audi. Yeah. The horses for courses. As you could hear there in the background, we were on board with a Land Motorsport car at that stage, and clearly you heard him going into the code 60 from the code 120, which precedes the barrier repairs which are going on at Wipperman, which is why the code 60 is still in place. This is actually his first flying lap out of the pit lane. Sector 1 was a mere 9 minutes and 3 compared to about the 1 minute 20 and change it ought to be. So he's dialing himself in. And he, Big Sheldon, is one of the numbers of drivers, of whom Paul has already mentioned a pair, the Stuck youngsters, who share the same name and are indistinguishable on our timing screen because they share the same name. At least their familiar name is the same. So the van der Lindes, Kelvin and Sheldon, just VD Linda. So unfortunately, there's not much we can do about that. We'll just have to plump.
Although you have got a Paul Trustford to your left, and somehow, magically, he can tell the difference.
Which class?
Sheldon van der Linde is in number 1 at the moment.
Yes.
Which was the other one you were worried about? It was the Stucks.
Well, I'm not even sure that a Stuck is in the car, but I brought Paul a piece of paper, a reference to a previous conversation he'd had about siblings or father-son combinations, or father-daughter, or mother-daughter, or mother-son, or whatever, who share the same surname, and how initials are not yet part of the glorious timing screen entry listing system, which doesn't always help, because even at Le Mans where they are, you get a Philippe and you get a Paul, and that doesn't work either.
True enough.
No, the timing system can do it, because each driver is allocated a position on a rotary switch, which is how the driver ID works. You have to set that ID to the right place, and so the timing system knows which driver is at the wheel, and fingers crossed, if all goes well, that our timing system on your left will be able to keep track of all the drivers, and we won't have a Stuck having done 22 hours out of the 24 at the end of the race.
Unless he actually has, obviously, by just switching the switch.
Well, yes, there is that. But there are penalties for not doing that.
No, exactly right. Except if you get in, walk into the garage, get back in and switch the switch to your brother's name, who are they to know? How are they to know?
Because the team manager signs a piece of paper. It's a game of trust, Martin. Behave.
Oh, there's a series in there, isn't there? So the Lab Motorsport Audi, which is fastest currently after the times set yesterday. That's another car not pre-qualified from either of the two early season VLN races. Did either of those get away without snow, ice, fog, hail, plague of frogs? I seem to recall seeing lots of pictures of drivers standing around in some fairly grim wintry weather.
Yeah, VLN1 was badly affected by fog, so much so they had to delay the qualifying session, and then later on that day was also delayed as well. I think VLN2 got away more or less scot-free, but it was the fog mainly. We didn't have any hail or freezing track as we did 2 years ago.
It's been a funny sort of spring, hasn't it? You know, they're still skiing in Scotland. It's May.
Yeah.
I mean, normally you can't ski in Scotland in December or January, but it's May. They are still skiing in Glencoe.
And yet, in England, a record temperature for a May Day bank holiday, wasn't it? Just gone.
And now it's like 11 degrees. Paul?
I was just going back to the VLN1, which, as you say, was delayed in the start because of fog rather than snow. But the VLN test, there was an official test day, which was completely cancelled because of snow. So certainly weather, as always, just a little bit iffy here. But Martin's perking up. He can see purple.
I can see lots of purple, actually. Fred Makovici in the 912 Manthey Racing Porsche, one of the cars that is already pre-qualified, right? Has already been allocated. I suppose pre-qualified is good. It just has such awful connotations in my sad little brain. He went green in Sector 1, purple in Sector 2 and 3. Which means it's rather germane to find out whether the code 60 is in Sector 3 or 4. I'm hoping then it's in the beginning of Sector 4. I haven't got my right timing map on me, and unfortunately the lovely Scrolly doofer doesn't. It must. Okay, well, he's gone green in Sector 4. Now, I know it's a long sector, but in the touring car yesterday, drivers were penalised for not slowing down sufficiently for yellow flags, purely on the basis that they'd set a green sector. But when the sixth sector is sort of 5 or 6 miles long, and the yellow flag is on one corner, and it's only your first flying lap on the track, you're bound to set a green. So there's a little bit of... He's done a personal best, but then it's the first flying lap for that car, I would think. Oh, yeah, it is right at the very beginning of Sector 4, the code 60. So he went personal best in Sector 4 and then black in Sector 5.
Yeah, so clear to do purple times in 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Had to back off and lost 30 seconds or so.
Yes, probably.
Because Pierre Caffer did a 307.5 earlier on in this session, and it took Fred more like 3.5 minutes to do the lengthy Sector 4, so that was him gingerly going by the repair work. Possibly the BMW's been moved now from the Cup 5 division, but mopping up and repairs to barriers continue. And in fact, they've extended the Code 60 now, so out of Hoa Act you've got to dip to 120 k's, and then there are 3 posts displaying the Code 60 flags.
Yeah, that's I have a feeling, and particularly having seen qualifying in historics yesterday, when one of the Porsches lost its lunch and then cars were going off everywhere. I think it's the trail that we saw that BMW had left before it came to a halt that is really causing that long Code 60. I think it was probably losing its lifeblood for several hundred meters before the engine eventually went, okay, do you know what, you haven't noticed, but I'm going to now tell you we're dead. So the onboard you can hear in your ears is with Romain Dumas, and he has just taken the number 911 Manthey Racing Porsche onto the Nordschleife. So sweeping through the lefts and rights of the Hatzenbach. And again, Manthey Racing at 911 and 912 Porsches both seem to be coloured in solely using fluorescent markers. Quite a few fluorescent markers, yellow and green being the colours of choice. I'm not sure why pink got left out. I particularly like a pink fluorescent marker.
True, or the orange as well. But that has been the livery carried by Manthey Racing certainly for the last 10 years. I was looking at some of the annuals, the books that come out covering each of these races, and Manthey to be found certainly as far back as 2008. I've got a list of all the winners since 1970 somewhere. And
Olaf Manthey was in the historic race as well, wasn't he?
He was.
Yeah. See, once a Porsche racer, even though you might be running the most successful Porsche privateer racing team, you can't take the racer out of the boy. So Kevin Escher, Romain Dumas, Lawrence Van Toor, Earl Bamber. That's a fairly average lineup in 911, isn't it? 912, Richard Leach, Patrick Pilet, Fred Makiewicz, Nick Tanio. Again, you know, a bit ho-hum. Obviously, they didn't get their chitty in for factory drivers quite early enough, and we're left with, you know, the B team of Le Mans winners and multiple 24-hour aces and Nordschleife experts.
Yeah, Manthey Racing 5 times winners, first of those coming in 2006, and always in a 911 GT3 Porsche. But it is, having seen victories for Audi last year, Mercedes the year before that, and Porsche in 2011, it's BMW of the 4 massive German brands that have had the longest wait so far. 2010, when Jürg Müller, Gustav Farfus, Uwe Alsen and Pedro Lamy won this race. And a lot of people reckon the M6 is going to be a strong car during the race this weekend, particularly the Rover Racing cars, 98, 99. They're both already in the top 30 for later too.
And is this possibly the last M24 for the M6 as a full-fat lead factory car, with the M8 already in GT form having taken to the tracks?
Well, the M6, I thought we only had for the first time last year.
Yeah.
So you'd think 2 years into the programme seems a bit short, but well, I don't know about the plan to move the M8 into GT3
No,
machinery.
I'm not sure either. I know that Aston Martin's plan always was to have road car, GTE, GT3, GT4 designed at the same time. Obviously there are lead times with manufacturing things, and you build your factory cars first. So the new Vantage is out as a GTE car, and next Christmas, or at Christmas, you might get your lead time for your GT3 or GT3 car presumably will come first, and maybe GT4 as well, because that's a very important customer market for AMR. Who else has just popped out? Car was second fastest, the Auto Arena Motorsport Mercedes, with Raffaele Marciello at the wheel, has just headed out on track, and the number 17 car as well, which is Timo Bernhardt's team, KUS Team 75 Bernhardt. Their Porsche GT3 has just gone out as well. That car was 4th fastest last night. Who's driving that one? That's Michael Christensen. I'm having trouble with English now. It's not going well, is it?
We've all been there.
I'm I'm starting to worry. The word dotage appears very occasionally in the front of my mind.
Yeah, Christensen seems to have done quite a lot of driving so far in the sessions. Andre Lotre, I seem to remember late on last night, up to the 11:30 stop of that session.
Do you know why they're called Kuss Team 75 Bernhard?
I don't.
Because the team was founded by Timo Bernhardt's father, Rudiger Bernhardt, in 1975.
Wow.
Rudiger Bernhardt, former rally driver, a lot of experience behind the wheel in rallying, and still has a lot to do with the building of the car. So although it's down as Timo's team, and Kuss is a accessory company, I think, that has been involved with Team Bernhardt for a very long time indeed. So family sponsor really for that team. Timo stepping away from the driving, Klaus Graf, the team manager in that car. And yesterday, I have to say, it was the best Porsche, and still is on our timing lists as the best Porsche, with the Manthey cars admittedly already qualified, so whatever time they set, it doesn't really matter, because their grid position is going to be set according to where they go in the top 30. So
with the exception of the 12, of course, which is also a Manthey car.
Sorry, yeah, you're absolutely right, because that is a customer Manthey car. And a little bit of, I wouldn't say needle, but competitive rivalry within the garage, because the Manthey 12 car is actually sharing that garage with the Kuss Team Bernhardt, and they want to have kind of honours as best Porsche. So, you know, in order to try and attract attention, because the Manthey 12 car is a customer run car rather than the main Manthey racing car, which is run by the Raider brothers and gets a lot of work support.
Yeah, and always was. In fact, when Porsche withdrew from prototype racing the time before last, the end of the Group C era, the UPS Junior team was effectively the factory-blessed team, and that was Manthey, like, you know, from way back when.
It's a bit like Joest for GT cars,
yes.
Isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. From when we were lads, well, nearly anyway. I thought Paul was going to leap in on the word dotage there, actually, but he's clearly keeping his powder dry on that one until I'm showing significant signs. I've lost my clock. I've only got my own wristwatch, and that's not really helping us very much.
Are you looking for a countdown to the end of the session? Because if you look at the full screen,
it is an hour and 10 minutes still to go. There you go. So I'm actually associating myself with the various different bits of Paul's 1, 2, 3,
it's quite
4,
ergonomic,
5,
but you need to know where everything is.
Yes, 6 screens, some of which are multi-layered and multifaceted. 22 different classes to be decided. I'm going to have to bring my A4 pad in and keep track of those, aren't I? Oh.
Sorry, that's out of date. That it is. It's now 23 classes.
You're feeding me shonky information.
No, it's just out of date, because that there is a new class called SPY, about which a bulletin has now been issued, which is for Lamborghini Super Trofeo Evo cars, which don't really fit in SP8, which is where they're supposed to be. So a new class has been created called SPY.
Right.
And there's a bulletin just there which tells you about the new class
that
SPY.
Works well on radio. Okay, all right. So it's basically the Lamborghini Super Trofeo cars, which are
the Door Motorsport cars that run on GT tyres.
Yeah, Super Trofeo Evos that are the latest spec of Huracan Cup cars, but a bit too quick to be put in SP8, which they were originally this week, and got switched between free practice and qualifying 1 yesterday.
And there are already many and varied SP8 categories, so that's it's another subset.
Indeed, lots of one-car entries as well.
All those times sleeping through double mats, and yet some of it permeated the thick skin.
Well done.
Subset. Oh dear. Bit first and last.
44, which is the other Falcon Motorsports Porsche. So bear in mind, in that awning, in that garage, you got a BMW and a Porsche represented by Falcon Motorsports on the Falcon tyres, obviously. Martin Ragginger doing the driving at the moment, and it's the 33 that needs a place in the shootout because the 44 is already pre-qualified. car's 26 at the moment.
Yeah, but it is in the shootout. The 33 you're talking about. The
33
is in.
No, it's not. 33 is not qualified.
It's
44.
16.
That's right.
So that's bubble territory, as I understand it.
As we stand, it might be
because
shootout.
because ahead of it are people
Our
who
cars
are
that's already
pre-qualified.
pre-qualified. Okay, so he.
So although he's 16th,
At the moment.
ahead of it are cars that are pre-qualified.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, but
So-
it's not. You can't say that the 33's in. Might be in at the moment as it stands.
Yes.
But doesn't already have a place prior to this. Well, indeed.
But if the
Right,
time
this week.
if the times aren't improved upon by the end of the session, then it will be in the top 30.
Yes.
Right.
So in fact, for them, the longer the Code 60 goes on, the safer they're feeling.
Entirely so, yes, and I think that was the kind of feeling I got, even though the track itself, that people say, is a little bit quicker. So much of yesterday's session was interrupted with slow zones, and the feeling was, blimey, that's going to happen again today. Lucky we got a good time in yesterday. Let's just go for setup today, and worry if suddenly looks like they're going to improve and we're in bubble territory, as you rightly described it, Martin.
You know, if you start 29th out of the top 30 shootout or 32nd, really, you know, you're in the same group of massed metal charging down into turn one. Chances are you're going to go up 3 or down 4 anyway because of the carnage. So as long as you're not 79th because you've had a major issue and then you really are stuck in, you know, with cars that are just going to be permanently holding up. As long as you're in the front starting group.
The other advantage that being in the top 30 gives you, though, is the blue flashing light, which you know about the blue flashing light is not light as it was last year. What it is your position indicator, which tells everybody what position in the race you are in the front windscreen, is blue and it flashes. So the car which is any car which is in the top 30, they are entitled to have a blue position indicator in their windscreen, and come the race, it will flash.
Yeah.
So that actually just gives you a bit of oomph when you're coming up to overtake somebody.
Because who, having ever driven on the road, doesn't immediately flinch off the throttle when a blue flashing light comes up behind them?
Yeah, so
That's a good choice of colour. You know, any other colour wouldn't have the same effect, would it?
At first, the regulations were rewritten so that all that would happen was the existing Lumirank system, that's the name of this position indicator, Lumirank, would flash, and everybody would have white lights, and the white light would flash. And then, having tried it out at the qualifying race, they decided that actually the blue works better as a light that attracts attention than the white flashing lights.
I'm thinking a police-style light bar across the front bumper is actually what's required in, you know, SP9, SPX, just so that you've got that full-on, it's the plod out of the way. I mean,
you don't have that in Germany, though. German mentality is not to have to slow down when you see a police car.
Just speed up.
Yeah,
Try and get up to the same speed.
Yeah, if you can catch me, then I'll get out of your way. I suppose there is a degree of that. Yes, it is a different mindset, isn't it? Right, I'll go back to the planning with that. Martin Raginger living up to his name, Paul.
I was just going to go back to top 30. Currently on the bubble, and because of the way my system is working, it's not quite doing what I thought it would. So this is by pens. I'm looking across to Johnny to confirm. But currently, just inside the top 30 is the number 16 Landcraft Motorsport Mercedes, who is currently 15th of the non-pre-qualified cars and 16th of the non-pre-qualified cars, and therefore just outside the top 30 is the number 10 Conrad Motorsport Lamborghini. So those are the cars that need, or Conrad is the car that needs to improve if he is going to get himself one of those blue flashing position indicators and get himself into the top 30 shootout.
Well, I meandered past the venerable figure of Hans Heyer in the paddock a little earlier on. I thought, oh, I wonder what car the boy is in. There's the answer, the number 16 Landgraf Motorsport Mercedes. In fact, Kenneth Heyer is driving the car at the moment, shares with Sebastian Asch and Edward Sonnstrom and Tristan Fautier.
It's a good lineup, that, absolutely. For a private Mercedes, Mercedes have actually produced a marvellous little leaflet, which I know Martin, you'll have grabbed one of.
I have.
And it goes through not only all the quasi-works teams, but also all the customer teams, and explains the differences between them. But some of the customer teams, you suddenly think, blimey, I'd quite like to have that in a works team, and that Landgraf car certainly...
It's quite a tongue twister as well. Kenneth Heyer, Sebastian Asch, Edward Sonnstrom and Tristan Fautier. It sort of starts easy, ends easy, and in the middle it's just a mishmash of consonants.
Yeah.
I'll have another vowel, please, Carol.
At the moment, I've got Conrad's Lamborghini in, as in it is 15th of the 15 that are trying to get a place, and then the first that's out, and therefore right on the bubble, is the 35 car, which is the G-Tronics 360 team at Chip Renault RS01.
Advantage Johnny. Paul has put his microphone down.
He means business.
He's now coming to look. I'm going to describe this because this is how the machinery works. Paul, sitting to my left, has put the microphone down, and I knew that was to pick up a pen, but it's not to do the maths. It's to go and double check Johnny's spreadsheet, because yes, folks, Johnny has a spreadsheet.
I do, which has
there's
been updated manually.
I thought you used to have a boombox, but apparently now it's a spreadsheet. Johnny has a spreadsheet, and he's not afraid to use it. And Paul is double checking the column where Johnny has got a green box with Q. Yes, he's working out. It's not in the margin; it's in column G, in fact. And so they are having. They're abandoning me now.
Paul's also asking, where does it tell you such and such an information, which I don't have. That's not in there as yet. But I've counted up the 15 that we require for qualifying.
Counted them up.
And I include
and I've counted them back in.
Conrad Motorsport, because we've got 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 qualifiers in the top 23 at the moment, and therefore 23 minus 8 is 15. There you go.
Hang on a second while I take my shoe off. Just need to double check that.
Those cars that are in as we stand, with very nearly an hour to go of this 1 hour and 50-minute session, the cars that are in as we stand, the number 1 Audi, the number 11 Mercedes, the number 24 Audi, the number 17 Porsche, the 15 Audi, the 6 Mercedes, the 12 Porsche and the number 3 Audi, the 25 Audi. Skip down a couple, then the 30 Porsche is in, the 100 BMW from Volkenhorst is in, the 33 BMW also in, as is the number 2 Porsche, the 16 Mercedes and the number 10 Lamborghini Huracan. That means the 35 car is the first not to be included.
So number 10 Lamborghini is the car in 23rd place, so track 8 ahead of it that are pre-qualified, and that's your 15. And right behind them in 24th place, you said the number 35 car, so that is the one that could. One other, pens poised, everybody. You'll want to write this down. I know you will, because you haven't got it stuck on a post-it note like I have. Absolute best sectors so far. Now, sector 1, 2 and 3 are green, so these are very germane. Sector 4, the absolute time tells us how much drivers have had to lift off. Sector 5 is green as well. Absolute best sector so far for sector 1, 1 minute 22 seconds. He's not going into decimals. Sector 2, 1 minute 02. Sector 3, absolute fastest, 1 minute 57 seconds. Sector 4, which is the Mahusic one with all the jumps, bumps, lumps and sexy names in, 3 minutes 04. Paul's taking it away from me now. Sector 5, a 47.7, basically flat out fast from the Minna Carousel to the finish line. And there's been an improvement in the absolute best in sector 3. It's now down to a 1 minute 55 seconds. So the absolute perfect lap, Paul, is... He hasn't written that down on a piece of paper for me. However, I'm going to hand the piece of paper back, and you can write that down, because I can't add, and I certainly am not going to try and do it live on microphone. So a few cars coming back into the pit lane. This sector 60 remains, which has been pretty much for all of the half hour of the session so far, Johnny. I think a few cars got a very early full green lap in, and then everybody else has been hampered to one way or another. Now, The theory is, if you already pre-qualified from VLN1, VLN2, or the qualification race, you do nothing now but concentrate on race setup, and then you just empty the tanks and bolt on some quicker tyres and a quicker driver and go for it in the top 30 shootout. But basically, it's free rein to spend all of your track laps getting ready for the race rather than having to worry about getting into top 30 shootout. Yeah,
although would you not want to gear your car up in readiness for single lap qualifying effectively, where it's not, I know it's not single lap qualifying, you actually get 2 laps, a flying lap, sorry, an out lap, 2 flying laps and then an in lap. So it's a balance between getting the car right for race setup, I agree, but also getting it properly fine-tuned to be as quick as possible.
There's that, but on the other hand, the car that set the fastest time in pole last year didn't necessarily get covered in lacquer and put to one side, whereas the car that took the checkered flag first did.
True.
So, yeah, qualified best on Saturday, sell on Monday, and cut there, I'm afraid.
It's not a line.
Every minute you can spend on track making the drivers and the car more comfortable will pay you dividends at some stage in the 24 hours, and that's, you know, it's not the Nuerburgring top 30 shootout that attracts the fans, it's the Nuerburgring 24 hours. So I would do what Porsche always did, which is try and ignore qualifying as much as humanly possible, almost to the extent of not really bothering going out at all, and then just try and win the race. You've got to have, especially on this track, you know, this isn't a world endurance race where the speed differentials are moderate between the really quick and the least really quick. Here, if you're honking on in your SP9, BMW, Mercedes, Audi or whatever, there's some bloke in 1600cc car in front of you in the dark, probably with his rear lights actually just hit a barrier. So the more you are familiar with the track and the car, the more chance you have of surviving those heart-in-mouth moments. For every code 60, there's a dozen code browns on the lap, and you need to make sure that none of them come back and bite you.
I suppose that, you know, the modern day of this whole week festival of endurance racing, Friday night has become such a highlight and a fan favourite that I'm almost falling for its importance, when actually, you know, whether you qualify somewhere in the top 10 is possibly more important than or, you know, it is an important stage of the week, but it's not, as you say, the be-all and end-all. And as long as you're there or thereabouts at the start, as long as it's not a big shunt and you're caught in the traffic, yeah, as long as you qualify on those first 5 or 6 rows, that's probably all that matters. The BMW that caused the code 60 has now been retrieved. There is a lot of damage to this Cup car, though, from Cup 5 on that front left corner. No wonder it spilled so much fluid on the lead up to the accident scene. They are already clearing some of the code 60s, I'm pleased to say, so that suggests not too much barrier damage as the intervention vehicles leave the scene and weave their way past the campsites now down through Brunchen.
I'm not sure he hit the barriers that hard. You don't have to take bits off a car. I think it was the trail that he left behind him that was the main factor. Paul Trustwell.
I was just going to continue the BMW's theme for a moment. Number 49 is a Securitas Zorg Rennsport BMW 335i running in the SP8T class. Firstly, I want to draw attention to it because an old friend of Radio Show Limited is in that car, Wayne Moore, who a Nuerburgring 24 hours wouldn't be complete without Wayne Moore coming up to visit us, so I'm sure Wayne will. However, he's going to have some great stories to tell us. The car is one of those I mentioned at the beginning of the practice session, which has suffered a penalty, indeed 2 penalties, both for speeding in yellow flag zones. The first time he was put to the back of the grid, he then speeded again in a yellow flag zone, and so they've made him start from the pit lane. Now the car has ground to a halt in Quiddelbacher and is apparently not getting going again. So that's the number 49 Secure Zorg Rennsport. Motorsport BMW, which as an SP8T car should be starting at the back of starting Group 1, and that car looks like it's going to be starting right at the back. So hopefully whatever the problem is with that car, the team's going to be able to get it fixed, because say Nuerburgring 24 hours wouldn't be complete without Wayne Moore.
Well, he's here at least, so it's complete. Where his car is an entirely different conversation. We have a green track for the first time since about minute 3 of this session. We're now 54 minutes remaining in this final open qualifying 90 minutes. So it has gone green where the BMW spilled its lifeblood all over the track. Left front corner, as Johnny said, was fairly heavily damaged. The wheel was still vaguely attached to the car, but I wouldn't want to put any faith in it remaining that way once it gets back off the flatbed. So track goes green, which then gives us a chance perhaps to look at the cars that are just outside of making it into the top 30 and see exactly how they are. So the number 35 car is the very first one that needs to find some improvement. G-Tronics, I remember them, they were big in the 90s. G-Tronics 360 team with their Renault RS01. That's in a particularly thick yellow, orange and chrome livery. I seem to remember seeing that a moment or two ago. So that will be the first. They are 24th on our current timing screen. 7:05. That Scuderia Glickenhaus car is already pre-qualified. They're 25th. 48 in 26th. They are already pre-qualified. And 44 is pre-qualified. They're 27th. 31. Mathieu Jaminet in that Porsche. They're not pre. And I'm assuming a Fricadelli 31 car. Oh, that one's better.
Correct, they're not yet pre-qualified.
So they're the second who might.
And then 101, Jordan Tresson, is the next one that might, and only I don't know that we've seen the 101 car, because that time is a last night time, and the number 101 car
just be very surprised.
Unless they've got a new chassis.
Unless they've got a new chassis.
That was the car that crashed out on the circuit yesterday evening.
Okay.
No, it's not been out today at all. So the 101, I think we can, although it is there to outside the bubble, is probably not going to participate in it. Now there was something that you were going through there that I just wanted to say, and I can't remember what it was now.
Okay, I'll start again. 35 is the first. Go ahead.
Yes, exactly. It was about the 35 because after free practice on Thursday, 35 actually topped the list. So they will be disappointed not to be in the top 15. Now, admittedly, the track wasn't necessarily in as good condition then as it is now, but I think we don't necessarily expect that 35 to be unable to improve, so you know we've still got not quite an hour, 50 minutes of the session remaining, plenty of time for improvements to come, as long as you just don't make any more caution periods out there, Martin.
Yes, I do my level best, I have to say, not to have caution periods, because there's one thing that is less entertaining than a really entertaining racetrack. That's a really entertaining racetrack where everybody has to go jolly slowly. And I know it's only a very small amount of it, but on the other hand, it doesn't really help. Matteo Cairoli, Porsche Junior comes, I suppose he's not really a junior anymore. Full fastest anyway, Matteo Cairoli, and he's just set personal best in Sector 2 and the freshly rejuvenated Sector 4. That car with an 8:20. Paul's best achievable lap, if you matched every absolute best sector so far, would be an 8:10. But the number 17 Porsche, the Team 75 Bernhard car, does not improve its position at the moment. I think one that has, going up to 6th position, is that an improvement for the number 6 Green Black Falcon car of Hubert Haupt, the Black Falcon Mercedes, which is in a sort of spectacular metallic chrome green, as well as chrome has to be metallic, redundant again. That car has now come back into the pit lane after a quick lap, and I should think that anybody who's been out has pretty much been circulating relatively non-stop for a while, and so now that the track's gone green, might be the time to get a few things set up. There's a very happy-looking Earl Bamber bouncing up and down on the balls of his feet in the garage, but he's not got a helmet near him, so I don't think he's going to be playing much part in this yet.
The number 6 car not yet having improved on last night's time, so that 8 minutes 19.658 is from last night. The best time it's done today, an 8:24.8.
And that was his last lap. Unfortunately, as soon as he goes into the pits, it then deletes his last lap time and puts in pit, which is not wildly helpful.
We were talking over breakfast about fast laps around the Nuerburgring, and the 2014 pole position time was exactly an 8 minutes 10.9 from Kevin Estra's McLaren. Last year, we were talking about who was on pole and whether that car was covered in glory at the end. Of course, it was the SCG, the Glickenhaus, that was on pole last year, which did a time of 8 minutes 15.427, although in the qualifying session, it was the Ferrari number 22, which I think it was Oliver Kainz was driving. No, it was Kyle Wietz, sorry. Did an 8 minutes 14.591. So 8:14 is the qualifying best from last year. In 2016, the qualifying best was at 8 minutes 14.5. So there's certainly four seconds or so still to come. But as we've been saying, if you're in the top 30, then there's no point in actually showing your cards at the moment, because it's not going to be, it doesn't count for anything at all. What counts is your time in the top 30.
Jack Shalafsky, apologies Jack for mangling your surname, tweets us at RSL_studio and asks Johnny, although I'm not sure that's actually what he wanted to ask, clarify, Paul, back to Paul, blue light rules. Does it flash for anyone in the top 30 overall at any point, i.e. if you start 75th but are running 25th, Johnny can answer this, or only for top 30 shootout cars?
Yeah, the reason I can answer this is because it's precisely the question I asked Paul Trustwell earlier on in the week. I said, OK, well, what if you're running in the race in the top 30? Does your little readout positional indicator therefore change to blue and start flashing? No, it's all based on the session later on today. So if you were in the top 30 qualifying, that situation with your positional light does not change then for the rest of for the whole of the race.
So you could be 199th, obviously not 148th.
You can,
and it will still have a blue light.
Because the important thing is that people that you're trying to overtake recognise you've got a quick car, and if you're in the top 30, you must have a quick car. Therefore, make room for me, because I'm going to be catching you very quickly indeed.
Absolutely so. Lowfields Boulevard. Hello, James. Says, there's a quote for next year's race preview. For every code 60, there's a dozen code browns. Let's see if we can get that done by Mr. Voiceover Man with a bit of drama behind it. And yeah,
can be arranged. Probably is being arranged as we speak.
He was looking very unimpressed at the far end of the desk, as he might understandably be. Paul Trustwell.
I've got some bad news, I'm afraid.
Paul Trustwell's mic goes off. Go ahead.
I've got some bad news, I'm afraid. The number 64 Black Falcon Porsche, the TSP7 class car, down to be driven by Jürgen Bloyle, Tim Zimmermann, Moritz Oberheim and Takis, is a return. Apparently they had an accident last night over at Schwedenkreuz. In fact, we had the code 60 out there for a long time, didn't we, Johnny?
Yes. And
it was that number 64 car which had caused it, and it's so badly damaged that they've had to withdraw the car. That news only just coming through a few moments ago, but so sadly we can cross out another one with your big blue felt pet.
Marker of Doom, yes. Marker of Doom exponent. So that was car number
64.
64 on page 3 of your printouts, boys and girls, or page 5 if you're in A4.
But I have to tell you, because I've done the homework, is that Takis is Panagiotis Spiliopoulos. So I'm quite glad he calls himself Takis, but at least say it once.
Racing on a Swiss license.
But he's Greek. But he's one of these multinational people that spends a lot of his time everywhere.
Yes, absolutely.
Much like John Hindhaugh, really.
Yeah.
But he's Greek.
No.
Well, that would explain the curly hair. this a revelation, I think, perhaps to the rest of the Heinhoff family. I was thinking sheepy hair, but of course it's shoat. So there we go. Goodness, excellent.
John is here, by the way. He does a lot of travelling, as we know. I mean, I think this is
I've been
third or the
expecting
fifth
a clip
weekend
around
now.
the ear from 30 seconds from him, and he's clearly, obviously here, but not right behind me. He is behind me, isn't he? He's not behind me. Maxi Goertz with another better lap in the number 48 Mercedes. This is the Man Filters, can we call it a crocodile car? Because it's got a crocodile-style bonnet.
It's almost like a Manti car. In fact, the
Yes.
Mercedes and the Porsche. Mercedes was on the track, the Porsche coming into the pit lane, and the paint schemes aren't radically different.
No, again, lots of highlighter pens being used in that design. It's basically highlighter yellow and highlighter green with a few dark highlighter green crocodile scales. I'm not quite sure where the crocodile scales have come in. Maybe that's just the way Man Filters are built, out of crocodile. Not sure. Possibly not.
Mathieu Jaminet doing a good lap that time around for the number 31 Fricadelli team. 8:19.910 puts the 31 car up to 8th fastest in this combined qualifying session, but the 31 car has already secured a place in the top 30 shootout later today.
Nina.
Oh no.
We need that in a cart. We need oh, what do you mean? Oh no, Paul. Go ahead.
I don't think number 31 had already.
31 is in, 30's not.
Yeah, but 31.
Yeah, qualifying racer.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yep. Yes.
I'm
sorry,
seeing it
Johnny.
on Paul's screen. Yeah.
Well done. Yeah, so that's really just a statement of intent, isn't it, from Mathieu Jaminet.
He only has one speed, Mathieu Jaminet, I'm afraid, and that's absolutely flat out.
Yeah, indeed. So this latest caution, the Nina, indicated on the tracker as actually an amber flashing light rather than blue, is at Arenberg. Okay, so the Schradenkreuz, you did say that, the fast left-hander, that's why we had all that ice 2 years ago and everyone was falling off the track into the gravel at Arenberg. But it's only a 120, as far as I can tell.
There's stationary car there, presumably.
In effect, there's three ways in which you can apply caution. You can hold out a yellow flag, which means caution, slow down, no overtaking, which is what they do first. Then you hold out a double yellow waved, and if you have a double yellow wave, that means 120 km/h speed limit. And if it's a really they'll hold out the purple flag, and that'll make it into a 60 km/h speed limit. In either case, or in all three cases, green flag is then follows to enable racing to continue. So when it comes down in steps, it goes up straight to green.
I mentioned a moment or two ago with absolute certainty that Earl Bamber bouncing up and down in the garage and looking happy, clearly was going nowhere. He's just left the garage in a car. Also, brand new fastest time around the Nordschleife for this weekend from the number 98 Rover Racing BMW, and it was John Edwards who has set an 8:17.811. So Earl Bamber's gone out in Porsche 911, Patrick Pilet out in Porsche 912, and a better lap from the number 35 car. That is actually their best lap so far, so that is a positive improvement for the G-Tronics car driven by Kuno Wittmer, and that's the Renault RS01. And does that put them where they need to be? It does, doesn't it?
Puts it 12th.
So that's qualified itself at the moment.
Puts it 12th of the non-qualifiers because that car has, well, with John Edwards skipping up to the top of the times, that's confused matters slightly on my part, but it's still 8th qualifiers ahead of the Renault RS01. But the best SPX car, that car, did you put in the time, did you say, 35? Kuno Wittmer.
Kuno Wittmer,
Yeah, understandable. So 20th position for it, and therefore the 100 car is 13th of the non-qualifiers, 14th the number 2, 15th still the Landgraf Motorsport car, and it puts Conrad Motorsport out of the top 30 stand.
Ooh. So they need to reply, and actually they haven't particularly been going very quickly. Breaking into the century for the first time in 100th position is car number 120 from the SP3 class. Oh, really? What's the interest there, you say? It's Kisting Motorsports Foxtail Manta, and Volker Streisek rather hogging the steering wheel. He's been in it since the beginning of the session. That car has now got 100th fastest. Just see another... Jesse Krohn's just gone quicker than previously in the 99 Rover Racing BMW.
He may have done, but he was always sandwiched between, I'll say always, for the last 10 minutes he's been sandwiched between the two Manti Racing times.
Okay, I'm now going to find where what they did last night at 8:20. Yeah, no, he's gone 2 seconds quicker. Last night's time was an 8:23.0. He's just done an 8:21. And very little change. Paul.
9:33.
There you go. Well, quite a lot of change. All right, okay, an 8:22 nil. Second quicker. But that is an improvement. But they were in anyway.
Yes, they were, and that's the car that Connor De Filippi went very quickly in yesterday as well. Connor doing the first stint of it, as it were, of this very nearly 2-hour session, of which we have just over 40 minutes still to go, Martin.
We do have 40 minutes still. You have 40 minutes still to go. I'm going to clear off a little prematurely because there is another qualifying session I have to do immediately after this, and I have to do it from quite a long way away, so my little legs will have to carry me that way. I'm now seeing the Bilstein car number 5, the blue and yellow rather than yellow and blue Black Falcon Mercedes, which is Jelmer Berman, Thomas Jaeger, Jan Seifert and Lucas Stoltz. That's the first time I've had eyes on that. And that car must be pre-qualified. Is that pre-qualified 35? No, only one Black Falcon's in, isn't it? That's number 5.
5 and 4 are in.
4, okay, I'm not, yes. I do need new eyes.
Well, the difficulty is, again, I've given you a sheet with the original car numbers on for the VLN races, and with VLN being nothing to do with, effectively, the 24 hours, they run with slightly different numbers.
Yeah. So the number 4 Mercedes HTP car that qualified in VLN2 is now the number 4. It's not the number 4 Black Falcon car.
Yes, it is.
It is the number 4 Black Falcon car.
And it was number 14 when it was at VLN2.
Ooh, okay. Right, but it is
and
number 4.
And it's a Black Falcon car, not an HTP car.
I need to cross out HTP and write in Black Falcon.
Yes, the 48 is an HTP car. The 14 and 4 is a Black Falcon car, which Dirk Muller is the driver of, and it's the driver plus the team which brings the number from 14 to 4.
Right. So for HTP, 47 and 48 both qualified. For Black Falcon, 4 and 40...
4 and 5. 4
and 5 both qualified. Gotcha. And 6 yet to be, but 6 is not pre-qualified, but currently is 7th fastest, so has qualified.
Provided there isn't a big flurry of a lot of fast times in the last few minutes of the session.
Now then, talking about the Conrad Motorsport Lamborghini Huracan, which just had been bumped out, I think it's just bumped itself back in.
I think you're right.
14th fastest with an 8:20. 0.856, which is slower than the 35. No, but considerably faster than the 35 car, which had bumped it out. So 35 has been rebumped. However, Kuno Wittmer is now on a personal better Sector 1, Sector 2, and Sector 3. So as Maxi Goertz Wales past the line below us, and the 48. HTP Mercedes.
And goes 3rd fastest in the process.
Yeah, Danny Juncadella goes out of the pits in the 47. But this little battle between the 35 car driven by Kuno Wittmer, change sheets of paper after looking at last night's results and find it easier to read. That's G-Tronic's Renault RS01 and the number 10 Conrad Motorsport Lamborghini Huracan. That's the battle of the clinging on by the skin of their teeth cars. Although actually no, the Conrad car isn't now, because he's got several non-qualifiers, non-pre-qualifiers behind him. John Edwards out of the Rover Racing BMW, looking fairly happy with that. I've just gone fastest round the Nordschleife. I think I'd look fairly happy with myself after that.
There is a car, and I think it's another BMW M235i Racing Cup car, therefore from Cup 5, in the barrier just ahead of Schwalbenschwanz. Well, it's the run from Flansgarten and therefore through the Stefan Beloff S into the Kleiner Carousel. It's up against the barrier to driver's left, so everyone is slow on the approach to Schwalbenschwanz. Once they get to the concrete, you can get up to full speed, but that car, I don't think Recovery Crew's with it quite yet. And again, I don't think damage has been done to the barrier there, but that is now a slow zone as well. Just one marshal post displaying the 60 kph limit.
Right turn lever confirms that at RSL_studio. Code 60 going into Schwalbenschwanz. Oh, the driver is out of the car. The car is up against the barriers on the driver's left, but clearly not firmly up. Oh, I suppose he could have wriggled out and through the nets and out of the driver's right, the passenger side of the car. But that car is just about to go under tow, actually, because there's a nice man with a tow rope pointing in the general direction of we're going that way, and that's where you're going to end up. So that 235i, everybody dawdling past him at code 60 speeds. Paul.
So by my reckoning, Johnny, and bearing in mind we've kind of gone into plan B over here, currently just outside the top 30 is the number 56 Lexus, which is an SP Pro class car, the Toyota Gazoo racing entry with 4 Japanese drivers in it. Is that right?
That is outside, but I also say that the Landgraf Motorsport car is now outside. That's car number 16.
Oh.
And the Volkenhorst BMW, the damaged 101 car that we haven't seen in this session.
I've kind of excluded that one now, the 101.
Are we marker of dooming 101 based on the fact that it hasn't been out today, do we think?
Quite possibly, yes.
Would that be maybe premature?
It is slightly premature because, as Johnny says, it is kind of entitled to, but they need to somehow mend it.
I think possibly what's changed is Maxi Goertz putting that 3rd place time in, which means it's another qualifier ahead of lots in the middle order, and therefore it bumps Landgraf out.
Yeah. But Maxi Goertz was already qualified.
He was,
yes.
Yeah. But it moves the line further down, if you like, the relegation line or the non-qualified line, just a couple of cars
further down.
The drop zone.
The drop zone extends further down. So I've got my football similes all lined up, ready to go.
I like it.
Yeah, that's as far as it extends incidentally. So this 110-minute session is 32 minutes now from. Oh, just missed it. I crashed the pips, Johnny. Crashed the pips. 32 minutes left to go. Earl Bamber, you can hear in your ear holes, is back up to speed. And just, you get up to that near VMAX, he's just creeping gradually around the ometer as he heads up to the end of the Dottinger Höhe and ready to start what he hopes by the time he gets there will be a clean lap. And actually, do you know what, he might be lucky in another 6 minutes. They might have cleared the code 120s and the code 60 down towards the mini carousel. Paul Truswell.
I'm just doing some catch-up here. That BMW which you saw behind the barriers a moment ago, what was its number?
Yes.
Didn't see it.
Here's a chance to grab it. 247.
Ah, okay.
Wonderful Radio 1.
Well done. Yes, that being the ADAC Weser car. The one that I was worried that it might be is number 238, which is the Volkenhorst Motorsport car, another of the BMW 235i's, but number 238 hasn't done a lap, or didn't do a lap last night, didn't do a lap in today's session. They had a gearbox problem today, they had a fuel pump problem yesterday, and now they're working in a hurried fashion on the gearbox to get that car out, number 238. But as yet, the 238, it has been out now. So yeah, that car, and indeed it has set a lap, so way down the field, but 238 is out and going.
All right, well, they've at least managed to cure their ills for the moment. Maro Engel in the number 4 Mercedes, yellow and black colours on that car. That's another of our pre-qualified Team Black Falcon cars. He shares with Adam Christodoulou, Manuel Metzger and Dirk Muller. So they are pre-qualified. And so more black and yellow with just a little blue SAP sticker on the door. Paul, you misled me there, so I'm going to correct that to yellow and black. And that car currently not wildly fast. 22nd place, 8 minute 23.8 compared to 8:17.8, so 6 seconds slower. I'm going to now delight myself by looking over the time on the screen. 3, Focus Tricex, fastest time in 9 minutes 51 in, oh, not necessarily set by him, but in the Foxtail Manta, at Foxtail Manta. That car, one of the firm fan favourites, and by firm fan favourites I mean my favourite, Magna Cruz. Okay. Code 60 still operational. There's a strange little glitch going on the tracker on the iPad alongside me, where cars are speeding through at previously unheralded warp drive speeds. I think it's just resetting itself. As is Maxi Gertz, who has just 48 HTP Mercedes, 8:19.17, improved quite considerably to go 3rd fastest from what overnight was not 3rd fastest. That's as far as I can go on the results. Was 23rd, so an improvement of 20 spots. Last night they set an 8:29.77, today an 8:19.17. So a big jump forward for Maxi Gertz. And the number 11 has, no, that's just been bumped down, so they hadn't improved their time last night. Still stands as their best, 8:19.293. And the number 11 Auto Arena Motorsport Mercedes, which has currently got your own Blinkermolen up, has not set a green sector at all this session, so they're clearly digging themselves in. Matteo Cairoli, fastest lap for that car last time round, 8:19.4. Cairoli in the number, no, that's it, it's almost a fast lap, but then he came into the pits. So he had green sectors, but didn't go quicker than they had done last night. Paul Trustwell.
Yes, I'm trying to track Tristan Vautier at the moment, who's the first non-qualifier in the Landgraf Mercedes, as we were, Johnny and I, just coordinating ourselves.
I thought you both gone for a wee together. I wasn't sure what was going on with that.
Sorry about that.
Hang on a minute, wait. What? Who?
We left you for a moment, but we're back now.
It's not me you're leaving. Think of the pity the poor audience. You know,
you've got this. You're fully on top, Martin.
There are greater needs than mine. Not many, I'll grant you, but there are.
Yeah, so Tristan, having done most of the driving in it, you mentioned that Kenneth Heyer and Sebastian Ash, 2 of the other of the 4 drivers, but Tristan has certainly been giving it his best shot. He did an 8:34, then he's hit an 8:38, but I think just struggling with unfortunately positioned slow zones, which has prevented him from being able to get the car into the top 30 thus far. But as soon as you've said before, the trouble is knowing when you don't just kind of wait for all the code 60s to be removed and then go out, because by the time you do that, then
there's another one.
There'll be another one. Yes. So you kind of just be out there for as much of the session as you can, and just take advantage of the clear track when it presents itself.
Yeah. Exactly, and that's what happened to Maxi Gertz. He was out and circulating, and bingo, we had that maybe 5-minute window, maybe 6-minute window where it was green before somebody else tripped over their shoelaces, and suddenly he managed to get a lap in, and Tristan Vautier hasn't. He's been out there and he's been doing some green sector times, but just not 5 of them in a row, and that's exactly what you need. So the Tristan Vautier in that number 16 car, which is the Landgraf Motorsport Mercedes, who
is actually
struggling a bit.
It would appear is circulating the Grand Prix tracker at the moment, because I caught him. The GPS is having a bit of a hiccup there and suddenly jumped it further back on the Grand Prix tracker. But I just wonder whether...
Now he's in Belgium. No, he's back.
I just wonder whether Tristan's game plan is to sit on the Grand Prix tracker, wait for that caution to clear, and then go for it down the Hats and back. But he's poised and ready. Just a question of whether the car's still got any fuel in there. But no, it's just jumped back again. So now he's ahead at the Dunlop hairpin. I don't think that tracker's playing ball.
The
16.
The bouncing ball. If you add together Tristan's best sector times, you get to an 8 minutes 24.7, which would put him ahead of number 100, so he would be in, wouldn't he? No, just behind 100. So, but he would still be in between 100 and number 2. So Tristan can look at his sector times and say I'm in, but unfortunately it's not good enough.
24 minutes in the session. My prediction now, and I stand to be corrected within 30 seconds, is that nobody's going to get a faster lap because there is a very second-hand number 89 Audi, which is the... Oh, why do I pick them? MEC Sinjig, I'm going to leave the rest, which has Audi TT, which has got very light over a crest and then written itself off on the driver's left in the barriers. John, you can say the word out loud. Flugplatz. I thought he was writing something that I really oughtn't to read out on the radio. The FMU in too close proximity at Flugplatz, and so was the barrier. So, yeah, that's going to take a bit of dragging away. We've got 23 minutes. Are we going green? Honestly, that's going to be really tough. So anybody who's just on the bubble, and again, poor Tristan Vautier appears to be getting Vautier'd out of the house on this one.
And that's the problem with just circulating on the Grand Prix loop while you're doing it, isn't it? Because if you'd been out on the circuit, then he may have been lucky and been just ahead of that incident. And even though the circuit may not have been yellow up ahead of him, at least the accident that just happened would have been behind him. But yes, very nasty looking accident that for the little green Audi TT.
I think the problem is, as it went to the left, the car immediately, rather than going into the tyre barrier and it cushioning the speed of the car, it went over the top of the tyre barrier. So it just, the tyre barrier was effectively a ramp, which pitched it into a series of rolls, and it's gone end over end at 89 Audi TT.
And
Rudy Speich, the driver.
It's done barrier damage as well, so the tyre stacks will need replacing. The car is essentially almost at 90 degrees to the line of travel and is blocking more than half of the circuit. So there is room to squeeze through, and everybody will come round and squeeze through, and hopefully not too much of a tortuous debris field for people to pick up punches and so on. But 22 minutes on the clock. I think we're going nowhere fast with that one, and I think that is pretty much going to anybody who was hovering on the outside of the top 20, and Tristan Vautier was definitely right, top 30. Vautier was definitely there. I think they're in real trouble. The man who's just ahead of him on the times at the moment, the number 8 WRT Audi of Hans Vantor, they're in anyway. Who number 2 are they in? They've made it in on pace at the moment, so unless Vautier improves, and I don't see that being likely, actually. So Gigaspeed should stay in their Porsche.
Clearly a lot of damage on the circuit through which the drivers having to pick their way, not necessarily damage on the circuit, debris from the Audi on the circuit as well. So you have to be a little bit careful as you're going through there, not to get punctures and whatnot on as you pick your way through that. So people are, I mean, it's not blocked the circuit, however it sufficiently compromises your lap time to, as Martin was saying, unless you're just trying to get the car set up at another part of the circuit to not really make it worthwhile trying anymore.
Well, so we got that big shunt at Flugplatz, and we also still have the 120s and the Code 60 out on the run down. Well, the Code 60 still at Nuerburgring? No, they had just cleared those away, hadn't they? So, so the embouteillage has basically backed its way up to closer to the beginning of the lap. So we'd only just gone green at Nuerburgring. We've just towed away our errant BMW that on the run down to Schwalbenschwang. That that was the way. No, in fact, Schwalbenstrand is still code 60, and the tyre barriers are going to require a little bit of work, not an awful lot of work. I don't think it has damaged the metal barriers behind the tyre walls, but the tyre wall will need shoveling back in, and that means either lots of manpower, they're going to have to get a forklift down there, something anyway to shunt it back in. So, conversations in the pit lane between Earl Bamber and Lance Vantor. And I think really it's a lovely sunny afternoon. Lance Vantor is going to strap himself in. If he gets one green flag lap in the next 19 minutes, I think he'll be very surprised. One of the indicators of how customer-centric a lot of these GT3 cars comes as you get a shot of Lance Vantor getting into the Manthey Racing Porsche. Before he starts doing the belts up, he reaches under the front of the seat, finds the little bar and shuffles it forward, exactly as you would do taking over a road car from your husband if he's considerably taller than you and you're considerably shorter. Hello, Mrs. Haven, how are you? Down at the Windsor Horse Show, so she won't be listening, so that's for sure. So I can say anything I like now. Getting a new classic car, hooray! That will reach her, I guarantee, at the Royal Windsor. Within nanoseconds, my phone will be going off the hook. Darth Vader's escape pod, otherwise known as the KTM Crossbow Coupe, with very familiar blue helmet in, with lots of silver stars around the helmet opening. Now, the fact that it's not a bell gives you a date, but it clearly gives you a family name as well in car number 202, and that is a Stuck. Which of the Stucks, I don't know, only it's not Hans Joachim. The Krankenwagen has arrived at the scene of our Audi accident. The driver is out, and he's being assisted. He's walking under his own steam, but he's just being assisted on either elbow by a couple of the medical crew to get onto the stretcher to go for examination. And in the parlance, I think he probably had his bell fairly well rung by that one. Looks as though there's unlikely to be anything broken, but as the car came into Flugplatz, it was just a little, the tail stepping out to the driver's right, and of course as soon as it took off, then, or got light over Flugplatz, then, as Johnny described, it speared left into the pit wall, and as it hit the tyres, it was still on the ground at the tyres, but then there was something just before the tyres, little...
Well, the problem is it's part of the Armco overlap, so you're actually not hitting tyres that are at the right angle. They're about 45 degrees, and it's just ridden straight up those, and then as a result gone end over end at least a couple of times.
And I'm not sure which Aston Martin it was that essentially went under the flight path of the Audi, but that, whoever was driving that, has come into the pit lane with eyes like dinner plates, because that was as close as you get to the really big one, and it was all just happening over his windscreen. You know, when you're on the motorway and some big fat crow takes off the, you know, the central reservation right at the last minute, and you duck and wait for the impact. Well, that was that, except it wasn't a big fat lazy crow.
Not quite the Gruner Holler they were expecting, perhaps.
No, definitely not. Christopher Mies brings the #1 Lance Motorsport Audi back into the pit lane. It's on the trolley dollies and back into the garage, and I think they might be starting waxing and getting ready for top 30 shootouts with that car. There's just a quarter of an hour left on the running clock for this session, Johnny, and if you're not ready, getting ready now, if you're in the top 30, then I don't know what exactly you are doing, because you're not going to get anything useful out of the track, I think, now until the top 30 shootout begins later this evening.
Well, we've mentioned Landgraf, obviously, because they're trying to squeeze in the remaining 17 minutes of the session. Apart from that car, with the absence of 101 from Volkenhorst Motorsport after Jordan Tresson's big accident yesterday, as far as SP9 are concerned, the 14 cars not yet in. That's the Car Collection Motorsport Audi of Stefan Aust, Christian Bollrath, Ronnie Sauermann and Peter Schmidt. Maybe it's going to be pretty tricky for that car to squeeze in. Did we expect it to be in the top 30 anyway? That's a question mark. The 56 Lexus LC would certainly be looking to try and get in as the only SP Pro car. But we don't have any other big absentees, I would suggest, any obvious absentees, let's say. Both SPX cars are in, courtesy of the 705 being pre-qualified after the qualifying race, and the 35 car now has its place as we stand, and there are no surprises, as in cars that we're missing from the top 30, I would suggest.
No, absolutely, Johnny. And given that we've got these, 31 SP9, including the 2 LGs, and then the 2 SPX class cars, we're kind of on where we should be for the top 30. Very occasionally we get an SP8 car into the top 30. We have had in previous years, but it's not a common thing for it to be achieved. So yeah, I think we've got the usual suspects in the top 30. What is, though, completely unpredictable, and I don't think we've got any evidence just yet for what might be going to happen, is who's going to end up on the top of the heap after the top 30. We know who's in it, but we could have guessed pretty much it'll be all the SP9s in it anyway. But who's going to be in it when you get to who's going to be at the top of the list?
Well, the only notable absentee is likely to be 101, the Falcon Horse Motorsport car that pretty much destroyed itself last night. But again, that's all bets are off there. As soon as somebody has an accident, then that's that. They're kind of out of the equation. So other than that, well, and the thing is of it, it's just having the right setup and the right driver and the right tyre all together, and just getting those couple of really clean laps. And so anyone in there could, in theory, be on the front row of the grid.
Absolutely. The Audi TT, incidentally, that just had the accident, Rudi Speich, the driver of it, runs in the SP3T class, along with a Golf and an Astra. The car that was leading the class there is the Subaru WRX, and that car, despite leading the class, has lost the power steering. And so they're having to try and fix that. Tim Schrick, the driver of the car there, saying it's rather annoying that it's happened, but rather today than in the middle of the race, whereas at least now they can fix it and get the car ready for the race. And of course, this really brings the significance of this qualifying session into focus, doesn't it? Because except for the top 30, where all bets are off, everything else is being set now. So for SP3s, for all the other V classes, the production-based classes, it's all pretty much set as it was.
The Audi TT crash. Still, they've replayed it again on our TV monitors here, and I was still trying to identify the flash. I know, third time. I'll be gone in 12 minutes. Trying to identify the flash of colour that was an Aston Martin going under the. Pretty much under the nose of the Audi as it came back down to land, and I was just trying to see if I could read a number that time, and I still can't. So not sure which of the Astons it was, but
it was.
Somebody sort will have a tale to tell.
I've just shouted across the Aston Martin lounge to a bloke called Johnny Adam, who surprisingly knew exactly which car it was.
Right, there we go.
It's the 39 GT8, and Heindoff's shouting behind me, going, "It's my car! It's my car!" It wasn't damaged. It went between the arm cut and the rolling Audi TT. It can't be his car anyway. Good line.
Might be talking myself out of the job here. So do we know who was?
David Tillinus was in it at the time.
Okay.
Yeah. So in fact, the driver we were talking to last night, Johnny, about being able to see the flags in the darkness.
That explains that. Well, at least he could see the Audi in the light. Oh, can you imagine in the dark? Oh, no.
Wouldn't really like to.
Come over floodplaats and there's lights in the sky.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And the green car that would merge very nicely with the background.
Probably in the darkness, you wouldn't realise what was happening as much as he got in that little flash of clarity as he came over floodplaats in broad daylight. Either way, okay, right, one car out on track. There are a few cars out on the circuit. The Glickenhaus is coming down at Dottinger Hurt, but with just 10 minutes remaining, our GPS tracker has got a dozen cars on track, and some of them actually heading out onto the Nordschleife. I mean, although there are a couple of serious Code 60s, there is an awful lot of track that you are still going to learn things from, and unless you feel that your setup is absolutely perfect, the remaining 10 minutes may actually learn you something.
Yes, I mean, then there are probably jobs still on the tick list of some of the teams, whether it's bedding in brakes, whether it's putting a little bit of wear onto a tyre, just getting the sheen off a new set of tyres, testing out a new bit of bodywork that maybe if you've got 2 bits of front bodywork, maybe you're going to put the spare on just to make sure that it fits and it goes round and doesn't wobble or anything like that. Yeah. So there are lots of things that, as I say, these teams have huge long tick lists of jobs that they want to get through, and it's very rare you get to the end of a session and tick everything off. And if you do, then you didn't put enough on the list in the first place.
You can almost be an engineer with a mentality like that. If you've got all your or a wife, if you've got all your jobs done, then I obviously didn't give you enough. So there we go. However, predominantly the pit lane is a very busy place. Those who are outside the top 30 are unlikely to do more than improve 1 or 2 spots, in which case they I suppose again it's more learning rather than actually trying to find a pace to do anything else. Now the Audi has been put on the flatbed, its driver has been whisked away to the medical centre. The next course of action is that they need to repair the tyre barrier. So the Audi went off on the driver's left just after Flugplatz, probably 50-60 metres after Flugplatz, ended up a couple of 100 metres a lot further away on the right-hand side of the track. So the right-hand lane of 2, quote if you like, that is currently covered by Code 60. What the track workers are now going to have to do is go and repair the tyre barrier on the left-hand side. So they're going to leave the cones down the middle of the track, but hurriedly jump the cones from the dead lane to the now live lane and make the live lane dead, so that the cars will now go further away from the barriers through the Code 60, and they can then get on with some barrier repairs, because of course not only is this session got a few more minutes to run, there's the top 30 shootout later, but in between times the WTCR cars go out for their qualifying session this afternoon for their races tomorrow as well. So the track has been very busy all day, even though not necessarily with N24 cars. Classic race earlier on today, and in fact that little accident for the Audi at Flugplatz reminded me of the qualifying session yesterday for the classic race, where one of the Porsche turbos got sideways the opposite direction over Flugplatz, but with very similar results, i.e. one very second-hand 911 turbo. So fortunately no multi-car incidents so far in this session, just 2 or 3 cars. The Audi by far the heaviest of them. And Johnny, when we saw it getting back onto the flatbed, basically everything behind the windscreen was flat as a pancake. There was about 24-30 inches of splitter sticking out the back, plus an exhaust pipe beyond that, so clearly there was an awful lot of TT that wasn't where it did ought to have been.
Yeah, it didn't look much like a TT, unfortunately.
More like a T.
And more like a T. And, well, I'm impressed with the safety cell of that car, though. The roll cage did a tremendous job for the driver to be able to walk away from an incident that flung the car, as you say, several feet into the air, and then bounced lots of times before it came to a rest. There is better news, though, at Schwabenschwanz, because that earlier caution for the BMW in the arm care barrier has now gone. Yeah. So we are just down to the one area affected, and that's the run down to Flugplatz after Hatzenbach. And so it was actually just before the right-hander at Flugplatz, where the cars do just briefly go light. We've seen over the years all 4 wheels leaving the ground on the GT3s as well, and a similar accident, as Martin says, with that Porsche in the classic race yesterday. Only that turned right and this Audi turned left.
The more on
actually, we may be green again now.
Well, I think stuck the time where it shows on our tracker that we are green, although we now have a stationary car right almost at the entrance to the pit lane, actually, and that's the number 73 at BMW M4 GT4. It looks like it's sort of run out of fuel, basically.
Is that Hohenrhein? Paul, rather than Tiergarten?
It's the very last little left kink onto the straight. So,
just after Tiergarten and before you get into the final S-bend that brings you on. Yes,
Hohenrhein. It's just that I'd never seen that name before, but it is on this track map. That,
it's on that one as well.
Oh, it is? Good, fine. I'd missed it on your big track map, which is traditionally tacked to the wall and has been for several years now, but it is too far away from the seating position.
I was going to quickly, I do recognise we've got a green track. Just on the bad news side again, number 134, which is the car that Jim Briody is in, the 70-year-old, hugely experienced American driver, a secure Zorg Rennsport Porsche Cayman. That didn't do any laps last night and still hasn't done any today. So they're going to, if they are going to take part in the race, they're going to need to write letters to Walter Hornung, the race director, and say, please can we play tomorrow. But that car potentially another casualty before the race even gets underway.
Driver lineup: Ugo Vincenzi from Gorgonzola. Oh, fantastic. No, I don't think I've ever noticed anybody coming from Gorgonzola before. Alberto Carobi is from Bergamo, and Jim Brody from the USA from Prescott.
Yes.
Probably don't call it Prescott, or call it Prescott.
Yes, Joe.
Not to the famous hill climb.
Joe Bradley behind here knows Jim very well.
Point-to-point race there? Probably not. There is a restriction now in place covering that BMW, so sadly we lose the one at Flugplatz and just have to Hatton back, but now heading into Tiergarten 60 Ks, although you could theoretically start a lap now. Fingers crossed it be clear by the time you get to that point.
Well, you're going to have to, aren't you? We've got because we've got less than a lap's worth of time to go, so really you need to get out there and try and do a lap if you want to try and improve your position. And of course, you know, those people who, as we've been describing just outside, Tristan Vautier in the in the number 16 Landgraf Motorsport Mercedes, endeavouring to do exactly that. And for the people behind that, it means moving up the potential grid in their respective starting groups.
Now we're saying that Vautier in that number 16 car has to improve. Have we already removed 101? 101 wasn't pre-qualified anyway. Okay, so we haven't removed 101, it's removed itself. And it wasn't in the equation anyway. Okay, good.
Speaking of removals, that speed limit at Tiergarten's gone already. The 173 car's been towed out of the way, so back to full speed.
There are waved yellows elsewhere, and still waved yellows just before Flugplatz.
Okay.
And the tyre barrier has not been put back in place, and that might be why there are waved yellows. Normally you would use a stationary yellow to guard something that's not going to be moved till the end of the session, but whatever, waved yellows. You know, let's face it, I think drivers need every encouragement to take care of themselves around here anyway. Not that they don't try to, but that it's one of those places where pressing on is sort of forced onto you by the nature of the track. You can't relax around here, I don't think, so full focus is required, whether you started with coffee for breakfast or beer, as more people appear to have done than have started with coffee. Jesse Krohn going back into the pits in the 99 Rover Racing BMW, and with 2 minutes to go, that probably won't reappear now until the top 30 shootout. And while I have the piece of paper out of my pocket, the top 30, the 46th ADAC Zurich 24-hour top 30 qualifying is a 40-minute session from 1900 local time, Central European time, so 1700 Greenwich Mean Time. Wherever you are, you can translate that, and that's a 40-minute session. So 1900, we will be on air a few minutes before that, just to make sure that we have our ducks in a row, and you have got @RSL_studio on your Twitter input ready to correct us as we go along. So minute and 12 until the checkered flag comes out. Anybody who is just about at the end of Dottinger Her might get one more lap in before the checkered flag aborts their run. However, I think quite a lot of the cars are on their final tour of the Nordschleife, and green sectors all the way from Jeroen Blekemolen, and the Auto Reno Motorsport Mercedes, not pre-qualled.
Martin,
lined up for this, Paris.
I'm going to hand this microphone to a gentleman who can describe the 89 Audi accident for him, because he was the man who was in the Aston behind it. David, grab that and talk to these guys.
Well, okay, well, David Tolinas, we first of all, we saw the Audi accident from the outside. You're coming at speed. What did you see?
Well, coming up, I'd seen the Audi in the distance and the run up to Flugplatz, but you can't see anything till you come over the crest. Came over the crest, and there was a big dust cloud, which seemed a strange place because it was on the outside. And then I saw an Audi flipping in the air, and I it was like, do I go left, right? And it looked like he was coming to the right. I went right, straddled the apex curb, and the crew thought I was in the wall, but there's zero damage to the car. So, I mean, it scraped down the center line of the car, but I thought I broke the splitter or something, but everything's fine. So, at that point, I didn't have much heart for the lap. I aborted from there.
Oh, I know, I thought you were made of stern stuff. Did you duck?
No, I was just happy to get through it. Yeah.
Yeah, because you were basically on his glide path as he came into land, and yeah, a second either way might have been a very different story, I'm afraid.
Yeah, a second earlier, and I probably would have hit him. A second later, and he probably would have fallen on me. So I don't know where he ended up towards the right-hand side of the track, yeah. But he was coming that way, and there wasn't much of a gap there.
Wow. Okay, there you are. Eyewitness account, David Tolinas. Well done. Thank you for that. Fantastic. It was a very frightening-looking picture from the outside. I don't think it was probably any better from the inside as well. Very calm telling of the tale. So, so the Aston Martin escaped unscathed. He said he was probably a wing mirror's width away from the barriers at speed, but probably a wing mirror's way away from the Audi on the other side as well. Laurens Vanthoor, 3 greens and a purple sector for the 911. His teammates were watching it on live streaming on their phones in the garage, and this is the car that is currently 16th fastest with an 8:21.5. Tristan Vautier on a very quick personal first sector in the number 16 car. Who's he going to bump? Paul Trussell.
Well, this must be Vautier's final lap, because we have a checkered flag being displayed.
Absolutely. So perfect timing from Tristan or the team telling him what to do. The guy he's trying to bump is the number 2 Gigaspeed Get Speed Performance car, which is car number 2, currently in the hands of Jan-Erik Sloten. And Jan-Erik is already in the pit lane, so isn't in a position to defend himself. So we're going to have to wait, I'm afraid, about 8 minutes to see where Tristan ends up.
Well, Volker Streisek has ended up in a dusty outfield somewhere in the Foxtail Manta. Looks like no damage done, but he's come over one of the crests and has zigged when he should have zagged, or at least the Manta has, and just carried a little bit more speed. Given how warm it's been for the last week or 10 days, every time somebody goes off, it does really look like the stages, the track suddenly become a Dakar stage, because there's so much dust. There was sharp intake of breath in the Manthey Racing garage, and lots of that kind of right-hand phew waving going on, as Laurens Vanthoor has just set an 8-minute 14.503 fastest lap. And wow was not quite the word that I read on the lips of Earl Bamber, but it was similarly suggesting a very impressive effort from Laurens Vanthoor. So he has gone top of the timing sheet as pretty much on the ring of the final bell as the checkered flag came out. That's a monster lap, Paul.
Yes, I mean 8 minutes 14.5 is almost exactly the time that was set in qualifying. So this equivalent session last year by the number 22 Bockenspiegel Ferrari, an 8 minute 14.503 for Laurens Vanthoor. It was an 8 minutes 14.591, so just marginally quicker for Vanthoor than this year than compared to last. But as I say, it's not going to be as quick of a lap, but Tristan Vautier now into the 3rd sector sector, and it wasn't quite as quick. It was as not even as quick as that car has gone, but the opportunity then for Tristan to improve, he needs to be into the 8 minutes and 24s in order to improve, in order to get into the top 30. And we'll have to see what he's going to be capable of doing in a few minutes' time.
A white sector 3, and that's where there were probably, as he got there, yellow flags out for the Volkers Trisec Foxtail Manta whoopsie, so that has definitely cost him. But if he's chasing number 2, they have just set another quicker lap, 8:25.26. Big thumbs from Earl Bamber for Lawrence Vantor as Vantor returns to Manthey Racing's pit with the 8-minute 14.503 tucked under his belt. And Bamber seriously impressed by that one. So gloves are off, I think, among the Manthey Racing Porsches, because if that doesn't throw down a challenge to their teammates, I'm really not quite sure what does.
Vautier up at Toa 8 at the moment, just going in towards the Wippermann, and so he will get this lap counted.
Now, have you ISO'd him on GPS, or is he actually the only car on the track?
No, I've ISO'd him,
right,
so he's easy to pick out. Isolated, I think, is the... So, yeah, Tristan now coming down into Brunchen.
He needs to find something a little bit more than he's got so far. Otherwise, what did number... Oh, I'm looking at my wrong sheet. Number 2 yesterday was an 8:25.28. No, so number 2 has not improved today because it was an 8:25.260 last night. So the Gigaspeed Porsche hasn't improved, so it is them or Vautier.
Or Vautier, and it's an 8. Really, as I say, the needed time for Vautier is an 8:24 or high 8:24 or a very low 8:25. An 8:25.260 is the time he has to beat.
So he's done a 1:22 plus a 1:05, so that's a 2:27, 2:28 plus another minute. That's a 3:28, 4:24, let's say, at the end of sector 3, plus 3 OC, that's 5:67.27.5. So he needs what in the final sector, Paul? Your maths is all right.
Personal best for him in sector 4, the long one of 3 minutes 03. And as I say, he's now on the Dottinger Hoa, heading down, and this is the last chance then for Tristan Vautier in the number 16 Landgraf Motorsport Mercedes that he shares with Kenneth Heyer, Sebastian Ash, Edward Sandstrom. It was us who did it, Martin, because we said at the beginning of the session what a strong driver lineup that car has. Here he comes now. What's the time going to be? You tell us. Sven
Muller has just set the fastest sector 4 time of all in the 44 car, and Tristan Vautier 8:26.724 needs an 8:25 something, and
8:18
jumps up to
8:18, which puts him overall third place.
I've lost him totally. That's so far up. That's why I've lost him totally. He's gone from 23rd to 3rd. There's a song in there as well.
So if there was a yellow in there, he's going to get his knuckles well and truly wrapped. But so Tristan Vautier safely in and demotes the number 2